defendant Trump back on the stand, the fallout and the consequences of a fraud trial that is consuming him and his adult children, who have their roles under scrutiny at Trump org and whether they were involved in this alleged fraud. Now, what does it mean for Donald Trump, who you see here? And now that I'm back with you for the news, I'm going to speak to you about what we've been learning in these moments here. This is him just at the courtroom while the cameras were still on before he takes the stand. What does it mean to be a defendant in court? Well, Trump is, of course, the only former president to find out, facing criminal indictments in Georgia and Florida and D.C., and this civil fraud trial in New York. Now, that's the one in New York that is civil, so prison's not on the table. And that does appear to have made Donald Trump louder and more defiant in these proceedings than, say, in Georgia, where he got his mugshot taken and prison would be on the table if convicted. But the financial costs here would be higher than even the expensive criminal defense that Trump is mounting elsewhere. This fraud trial continues to grind forward with tough testimony for Trump and the organization that he founded that is named after him, his company, his brand, literally. The judge has repeatedly limited, cornered, or even outright rebuked defendant Trump's testimony. And remember, we've told you this before. It is the most important thing to know about this case if you feel like there's a bunch of cases and we lose track of details. This fraud case, the one about whether he lies to make money, that if he were honest, he would not have the big, lucrative company that he's had for so many years, the fraud case has no jury. That's different than every other criminal case. So when defendant Trump acts or testifies in ways that hurt him, in this case with the judge, he's hurting his entire case. Now, I say that quite specifically because that's different than a case, for example, where you could imagine a defendant upsetting the judge and clashing. But if one juror agrees with the defendant or one juror thinks there's a reasonable doubt, it doesn't really matter that the judge was mad. Heck, sometimes you could argue it helped. That's not this case. And we seem to see here, from what we've been tracking, and we're not going to make you sit through all of it, or I'm not going to read it all to you. I'm going to show you just the key parts right now. It seems to be that the presiding judge is finding that Donald Trump's testimony goes well beyond what it is allowed, which is his view of events, his perspective, his defense, if you want to call it that, and really barging into irrelevant and politicized material. This judge pointedly telling Donald Trump's attorneys, can you control your client? This is not a political rally. This is a courtroom. Later saying, I don't want editorializing. We'll be here forever. You got that right. And then ultimately instructing Trump on the stand to, quote, just answer the questions. No speeches. Now, going under oath is not an interview. It's not a press conference. Those are processes that, if you just think about it, use the question and answer format, right? We know that. You see them ask the questions, and then you see the president or the politician answer or respond to the questions. But that format is where the speaker's largely in charge of the response. You can answer, you can deflect. You can give a long answer or a short one. Heck, in a press conference, sometimes they ask you something about some CIA operation, and you say, you know, we're not answering that. We're not getting into hypotheticals. Presidents take more questions than most people. They have that experience. They know how to sort of get where they want to go through that process of questions. But Donald Trump's attempt to try to turn this testimony under oath into his own personal press conference is backfiring with the judge. In fact, the judge even said quite clearly, applying the rules, that not only was one answer irrelevant, but he formally warned Trump's lawyers that some answers were so consistently, repeatedly, and wantonly out of bounds that the judge might draw a, quote, negative inference to any questions asked. Now, most criminal defendants avoid taking the stand entirely because a mistake on the stand is just too big a risk. It could be the thing that lands them in jail. There are a few signs that Donald Trump would take the stand in those other criminal trials I mentioned, but here in civil court, he is rolling the dice. He is trying to use this bluster, even these clashes with the judge who has so much power over him right now, power over his money, his company, its legal status. He's still trying to do his thing and divert focus from the evidence to his own claims on the stand. And that's something that New York State attorneys have been pushing back on. And here is where we can show you something. We don't have cameras in the court, but we can show you some of the audio tapes that they did use, which are now part of the evidence, a tape of Trump making these claims about his properties in a Forbes interview.
That's 40 Wall Street. Right. It's the tallest building in downtown Manhattan, now outside of the world. It was the tallest, and then the world. It was for 5 years the tallest. Yep. I'm glad it's not anymore. Yep. Right? But that's it's a 78-story building. Fully rented, throws off a fortune. It's going to throw off, would you say 50 million maybe this year? 50 million at least.
Quite empty.
Okay?
maybe, at least. This is him, massaging the numbers in a public setting there, because he's saying that to a magazine reporter. The judge is considering how much of Trump's actions, though, were ultimately part of an intentional fraud. And amidst all these attacks from Donald Trump, he's, of course, doing what he does. Fake news was actually initially, if you've forgotten, it was a term that Trump stole from people criticizing pro-Trump fake posts. Here you see the first word. This is from Donald Trump. He's saying this is a fraud. He's the one on trial for fraud, but he's accusing, for example, the Attorney General of perpetuating a fraud, unfair trial, calling her a hack, all these attacks on the AG. And it's making for a very contentious process, to be sure. We're not going to show you more of his efforts to seize the limelight and speak out in front of the courtroom because they were not newsworthy. If they are newsworthy, once we review it, we will quote and excerpt some of that. But most of this was, well, to use his word, hackery. It wasn't substantive. It wasn't based on evidence. It wasn't newsworthy. As for how contentious he has made it and how the judge has tried to wrangle him, that itself has now become a kind of a late-night punchline of its own.
It was nuts. Trump was yelling, the judge was annoyed, and the lawyers were trying to keep peace. The courtroom basically turned into everyone's Thanksgiving.
Who hasn't been there? Get ready. Plenty of stuff to debate at this month's Thanksgiving, I'm sure. But whether the squabbling is familiar or not, or a punchline or not, there is evidence being yielded, however slowly or frustratingly that process might go. The lawyers had Trump admitting, for example, that he is involved in this financial material preparation, that he would look at these statements, that he would see them, and then he would admit, he said, maybe, on occasion, have some suggestions. Now, you can go through the wiggle words all you want, but Trump, like his adult children executives, is basically admitting that they are involved in this process. This is a process, of course, that they have tried to take a lot of credit for when things were working, build whole TV shows and brands around it, build a campaign around it. Of course, that was part of his argument, the whole business executive thing, but then walk away from it when the bill comes due in court. Now, what's next? The trial continues tomorrow with Ivanka Trump taking the stand. She memorably testified about her father's actions when Congress was investigating the insurrection. This is some of that deposition video you might recall. And again, we keep it real around here, so I'm going to tell you what we know, at least about her past testimony, as everyone gets ready for what she'll say under oath tomorrow. Ivanka, unlike some figures in Trump's orbit, has been willing to talk publicly. However, she usually does so without revealing very much.
It's easier for us to be personal, to take our brand personally, because it is a family brand.
20 years from now, maybe 30 years from now, who knows where I'll be? Where do you think the Trump Organization will be, and where will you be?
I think we'll be right here, and the Trump Organization hopefully will be everywhere globally.
His work is his passion, and he found a way to share it with us.
Passion, work, family business. This is a lot of what we have been processing here in the past when we've heard Ivanka and others try to big up and spin the business. The question now is whether the spin is allowed, has crossed a line, or has turned into an ongoing group fraud that could ultimately take a lot of money out of the Trump Organization. Does the evidence matter? Does it matter that the judge seems to be less than pleased with the witness, the defendant? And what happens if they are able to close the circle and say there was a lot of fraud here?
Well, look, I think that the judge has had a real challenge here. I think some of the comments he made yesterday probably, and even would second guess them when he's lying in bed last night. It's a tough environment. But I don't think Trump is really thinking about the law here. I think he's thinking he lost here. So he, as you suggested, he's really playing to the public here, and he's playing for an appeal. On the former, I think he's probably scoring some points because he's speaking to his base. On the latter, on appeal, I don't think he's helping himself at all.
When the judge says, well, look, I'm actually going to start taking your answers and using them against you because you're so irrelevant, you're so off the facts, does that change what the ultimate kind of punishment could be here, or not really?
Look, insofar as there's a real delta between what the numbers can be, yes, I think it does. It can make a difference in terms of how the judge actually applies the calculation and determines at the end of the day. But I think some of the things that is really going to count against him in that context is things that really have already been decided, principally the liability, the fact that he was committing fraud. So now the question is really, how do we calculate that? And I'm not sure how much of that testimony really affects that calculus.
We have you here as a very relevant person who created these tapes, right? Some of these tapes are being used against Donald Trump. That wasn't your purpose, but they're not state secrets. We have a little more from one of these, so let's listen to the interview.
Sure.
If I wanted to sell 40 Wall Street, I'd get $750 for it tomorrow. It's a major building in downtown Manhattan. How could it be worth $373 million, Randall? Well, your people, you're very conservative. You're the problem. And look, all I can say is Forbes is a bankrupt magazine, doesn't know what they're talking about, okay? That's all I'm going to say, because it's embarrassing to them.
Normal back and forth with a business person, or evidence of fraud because the numbers were so off?
You know, we've done the Forbes 400 since 1982. There has never been another person on that list who has cared so much and lobbied so hard to move themselves higher on the list than Donald Trump. Now, from a legal perspective, why these lies and this whole effort matters is that they're parallel to the lies that he was telling banks.
Right.
And in fact, in this case, 40 Wall Street, the lies that he was saying about his profitability, that $50 million number that he threw out that was nowhere near reality, was similar to lies that he was putting on his financial statements, using inflated net operating income figures to pump up the value of that asset. And if you go through asset by asset, you'll see similar things where the underlying numbers that he was lying to the media about, he was also lying to his banks about.
And in your experience as a financial reporter, that's like really common or rare?
No, very rare. I mean, why would you lie? And to this extent, I mean, sure, there might be a little bit of, oh, well, if you take out one line item, then the profits go from 20 million to 21 million. But you can't say that a building that was losing money was in fact making $50 million, and then 10 minutes later say it was making $70 million, and then 30 seconds after that say it was making $80 million. These lies are totally unhinged to reality.